Good people did not suddenly get harder to find. They get easier to reject because somewhere along the way, we stopped looking for a partner and started collecting proof that we are wanted. And those are not the same thing. The moment they split apart, every person on the other side of the screen turned into a product, including you. Let me show you how that happened and why it's quietly making everyone miserable on both sides. Stay till the end. I'll give you a simple test for telling a real deal breaker from one that the market just tricked you into. Something happens when a market changes its rules. It quietly changes the price too. We didn't just lose the path to a partner. We swapped the goal for something that feels like winning but leaves you emptier every time. There's a specific kind of tired that comes from modern dating. It's not heartbreak. It's the tiredness of a shopper who's been in the store for hours and can't remember what they walked in for. That feeling has a name and a business model. So let's get into it. Let me start where the internet starts, with the ugliest version of this conversation, because if I don't take on the loudest version of it, the people who believe it will think I am dodging. So there's a whole genre of content built on one line. Simps create the whole market. The market or the argument goes like this. Men keep paying for attention, for a phone number, $20 for an Instagram handle from a girl who won't even turn to face them. And because men keep paying, a certain kind of woman learns she can charge. Attention becomes something you sell, and the men who pay the most set the price for everyone. Now, we get two reactions to this. Team 1 hears it and cheers. Team 2 hears it and gets offended and stops listening. Both of them miss the actual insight buried inside the cruelty. Strip out the contempt, the name calling, the she's not worth a $300 meal, etc. And what's left is something almost economic. It's a two-sided market. One side has too little of something, the other side has too much, and a price forms in the middle. I'll say it plainly. The guy yelling about Simps stumbled onto a true mechanism, then buried it under so much resentment that nobody could really use it. So let's dig out the mechanism and leave the resentment in the bin where it belongs, yes? So there's actually a real name for what he is describing. A sociologist named Eva Illouz, she has spent her career on it. She calls it emotional capitalism, the slow process where the logic of the market creeps into the most private part of our lives until we started evaluating people the way we evaluate purchases. Market value, status, looks, security. What does this person say about me? And once you're doing the math on a person, you've already stopped seeing the person. That's the engine of this whole episode. The behaviors you'll recognize today, the swiping, the checklist, the ick, the paying, those are the surface. Underneath all of them is one quiet shift. Validation became the currency. And the apps and the feeds became the marketplace where it's bought and sold. I am calling it the validation economy, and once you see it, you really can't unsee it. When validation becomes the currency, it quietly replaces something we used to depend on. Information. Think about it. A match doesn't tell you he is reliable. An expensive date doesn't tell you she'll stay when it gets hard. 100 messages don't mean a single person actually knows you. And getting ignored by an app does not mean you're unwanted in real life. It means an algorithm didn't put your face in front of anyone that day. So that's the whole tragedy in one sentence. Validation became a substitute for information. We started collecting proof that we are wanted instead of gathering evidence that someone is worth wanting. Hold on to that line because it's where this entire episode is headed. Let's start with what dating actually feels like now, mechanically, because the feeling is the clue. When you open a dating app, what are you doing? Be honest, you're browsing. Tap, judge, swipe, tap, judge, swipe, a face, a height, a job, a vibe. 3 seconds each. Well, drop a comment below if I am wrong. Most people think they're dating. They're not. They're shopping. Researchers at Northwestern studied online dating and found that the moment you put a wall of profiles in front of someone and let them compare side by side, the brain switches into what they call an assessment mindset. You stop relating and you start evaluating. You start ranking. You start optimizing the exact mental setting you used to buy a laptop. Here's the line from that research that stopped me cold. They wrote that dating apps push you towards seeing the other person as a product to be acquired rather than a human being to be known. So think about what that does to you. Have you ever gone on Zillow and look at houses you have absolutely no intention of buying? Beautiful kitchens, ocean views, places you'll never set foot in. You're not house hunting, you're house wanting. The browsing is the whole activity. There's no closing. It's the same itch. We scroll past people we never planned to choose because the scrolling itself became the habit. Now, here's where it gets specifically toxic. The checklist. When you're shopping, you make a spec sheet. 6 foot plus, 6-figure income, no baggage, funny but not goofy, ambitious but emotionally available, spontaneous but stable. We laugh, but people genuinely carry lists like this now, and they treat this list as a wisdom, as knowing your worth, as having standards. But a checklist is a shopping document. It works for refrigerators. It doesn't work for human beings. Because the things that actually make a marriage last, how someone treats you when you're sick, whether they apologize first, whether they show up when it's boring. None of those fit on a spec sheet, yeah? You cannot filter for character in a search bar. So you optimize for the things you can measure and you screen out the things that actually matter. And then you wonder why the person who checked every box left you feeling like you were dating a resume. For Filipinos, may kasabihan, di mo makikita ang tunay na ugali ng tao sa unang tingin. You won't see a person's real character at first glance. My mother used to say, you only really know someone after you've been hungry together, scared together, or broke together. None of that is swipeable. There's a line from The Little Prince I've carried since high school. What is essential is invisible to the eye. A screen only ever shows you the visible, the essential part, the part that actually decides whether a love lasts, you only find with time. When you shop for a person, you get a product, and products get returned. Okay, so we're shopping, but shopping for a person has a strange side effect that shopping for a fridge or laptop doesn't. The more options you see, the worse you get at choosing. Let me prove it to you with jam. So years ago, 2 psychologists set up a tasting booth in a fancy grocery store. Some days they put out 6 jams, other days 24. The big display pulled a bigger crowd. Of course it did. More choices looks exciting, right? But here's the twist. When there were only 6 jams, about 30% of people bought one. When there were only 24, almost nobody did, around 3%. More choice, fewer decisions. The people with fewer options were happier with what they picked. That's called choice overload. And since the jam, they've run it with all sorts of products and even with speed dating. The pattern holds. More options, harder to choose, and you end up less happy with whatever you finally pick. When there's too much to choose from, the brain doesn't choose better. It freezes, or worse, it starts rejecting. This is the part I really need you to think about, because there's a study that names exactly what dating apps do to your heart over time. Researchers had people date online in a controlled setting and watch what happened as they saw more and more profiles. They found something they called a rejection mindset. The longer you swipe, the more you reject. Not because people get worse, they don't. Because you do. By the end, your odds of accepting anyone had dropped about 27% compared to when you started. The same person you might have said yes to at profile number 3, you swipe left on at profile number 30. You haven't gotten pickier, you've gotten colder. The researchers put it gently. People gradually close off. That's premature rejection for you. You're killing connections before they have a pulse. Not because they failed a test, but because the machine trained your thumb to flick left. Yeah? And it helps to name the 2 ways you can look at another human being, because the apps quietly push you into the worst one. The first way is discernment. Discernment asks, what would actually help me understand this person? Are they safe? Are they reciprocal? Is this something I could build on? It's looking for a person to say yes carefully with open eyes. The second is filtering mode. Filtering mode asks the opposite question. What is the fastest reason I can find to reject this one and get back to the feed? Discernment hunts for a yes. Filtering mode hunts for a no. And here's the thing, a no costs you half a second. A yes costs you months of actually showing up. So guess which one the machine trains into your thumb. And now let's talk about the ick. Well, sometimes the ick is your gut feeling catching a real red flag. But a lot of the time, the ick is just a rejection mindset wearing a costume. Your overloaded brain hunting for any excuse to swipe left, because there's always a next one. It gives you permission to keep the tab open. Now, the deepest version of this, there's a man named Barry Schwartz who split the world into 2 kinds of choosers. Maximizers who have to find the best, the absolute best, no settling. And satisficers who look for good enough that meets their real standards, and then they stop and they commit. You'd think the maximizers win. They actually don't. Schwartz found that maximizers end up less satisfied, more full of regret, even a little more depressed, even when they objectively land a better option. Because the maximizer is haunted. There's always a better gem, a taller guy, a funnier girl, a better tab. Dating apps turn everyone into maximizers. And a maximizer can never ever be at peace with a person, because a person is finite and the feed is infinite. This is the good versus perfect trap. In chasing the perfect partner, you become incapable of loving a good one. And good ones, the loyal, kind, shows up on a Tuesday ones, are the only kind that ever build a life with you. I stand by that. The perfect partner is a maximizer's hallucination. The right partner is a satisficer's decision. If that feels abstract, here's a tool you can actually use tonight. Take everything you want in a partner and sort it into 3 buckets. So bucket 1, non-negotiable, and the things that protect your safety and your direction in life. So does she want kids if you do? Is he honest? Are you walking toward the same future? So bucket number 2, preferences. Things you genuinely love but could build a wonderful life without. A certain height, a certain hobby, a certain look. Nice to have, not load-bearing. And bucket 3, fantasy upgrades. So the traits you only think you need because comparison made an ordinary partner feel like a downgrade. By the way, I turned this exact 3 bucket sort into a free workbook, The Deal Breaker Test. Links in the description. Do it tonight, honestly. Most find out half their deal breakers were never deal breakers at all. That's the whole point. Now, back to the episode. And here's the sneaky little trick the validation economy runs on you. It quietly promotes your preferences into non-negotiables without you noticing. A height you'd have liked becomes a height you require. A nice first date becomes proof of seriousness. Instant fireworks become evidence of compatibility. Not one of those predicts whether a person will actually love you well, but the economy convinces you they are deal breakers. So the problem was never that you have standards. The problem is mislabeling a preference as a non-negotiable and rejecting a good person over a bucket 3 fantasy. And this fantasy machinery cuts both ways. It doesn't only make you reject a good person over an upgrade that isn't real. It can also make you fall for one. Now hold that thought. It matters a lot when we get to my side of the world a little bit later. My partner ran an experiment. When he listed his real income on the apps, he got 1 to 3 messages a week. Then he changed one number. Same profile, same photos, same bio. He put $200,000 a year. The attention? It went up about tenfold. Nothing about him changed, just the number. And I understand that's the part that gets under a man's skin. Not because money shouldn't matter. Of course it does. Life is practical after all. But when the number moves and the man doesn't, and suddenly he's visible, you start to understand why some men feel like they were never seen as a person at all. Now, her side. She gets the opposite problem. Too many messages, but all those messages don't tell her which ones are real. Is he serious? Is he bored? Did he message 100 other women today? She can't tell. And when most of it turns out to be nothing, the attention stops meaning much at all. And she would just start collecting them. So here's the cruel little symmetry. Many men feel unseen. Many women feel seen, but not known. Most women couldn't name that feeling if you ask them. But it sits right under the surface of why dating leaves them so unsatisfied. Those are not the same wound, but they definitely rhyme. And they are both lonely as hell. And neither side is getting the one thing that would actually help. Real information about whether the person on the other end is reciprocal. They just get a rank. Because that's what the app hands you every time you open it. A rank. His feels too low. Hers feels high but counterfeit. So he competes harder. Pays, performs, overgives. She filters harder because filtering is how you survive the static. Both responses are completely rational, by the way. Both make the market worse for everyone in it. That's the trap of being ranked. You can play it perfectly and still lose. Episode 2 was about where all the attention went. This is about what being ranked every single day does to the person doing the swiping. So watch what each side does with that rank, because this is where that Simps and hoes line from the beginning finally makes sense, with the poison drained out of it. It was clumsily pointing at exactly this. Not a villain, a marketplace. When you're flooded with attention you never really worked for, something subtle happens. Attention stops feeling like a gift and starts feeling like a resource, inventory. And a certain kind of person, handed daily validation she never asked for, learns to manage it like a stock. She rations it, she prices it. Some monetize it directly. Pay me for my number, buy me an item in my wish list, tip me on the live, subscribe to see more juicy content. Well, that's not female nature, the way the angry men online want you to believe. That's just what any human does when a market hands them a surplus of something other people are desperate for. Now put anyone in that seat and most would do the same. It's a simple supply and demand thing. And on the other side, when you're starving for any signal that you matter, you'll pay for scraps. You'll send the $20, you'll buy the booze, because the apps figure this out. They sell validation directly. Tinder will literally sell you a super boost that promises up to 100 times more eyeballs on your profile. Visibility for sale. hope for sale. But here's the deeper version of that same move, and it runs on the other side just as hard. So there was a clip going around of a woman saying something that actually stopped me. She says, a lot of women spent years investing in themselves, the shoes, the bags, the procedures, the wellness retreats, and quietly confused becoming more expensive with becoming more valuable. Those are not the same thing. You can upgrade your entire lifestyle and never once touch the parts that actually build a relationship. Your patience, your judgment, how you are to live with on a hard week. And this woman named the cost herself. When your lifestyle gets more expensive, your expectations climb right along with it. Suddenly, a regular good man isn't enough anymore because you want the one who can fund the life that you got used to. Your pool didn't shrink because you got exceptional. It shrank because you got expensive. Now, I have to be careful here because the guy who played that clip ran it straight off a cliff. He turned it into women are products, men are the customers. Go do market research on what men want. Well, no, because that's the exact same commodification we threw in the bin at the start, just pointed the other way. A person is not an inventory that you build for a buyer. But take his contempt off and you're left with the one thing this whole economy does to all of us. It sells you the receipt and calls it the relationship. The man buys the booze, the big date, the gift, trying to purchase the feeling of being chosen. This pattern in a woman buys the upgrade, the brand, the price tag. She is trying to purchase the feeling of being worth choosing. Same move, opposite counter. Both are spending money to manufacture worth instead of building it. And the things that actually matter or that make a person worth staying for, kindness when it's hard, loyalty when it's boring, the grace to say sorry first. None of it is for sale. Not at the mall, not on the app. And that word, hope, is the whole business. So this is the loop the platform dangles. You chase validation you can't reach. The flooded learn to sell what they have in surplus. The starving learn to buy, and the apps take a cut from all of it. And also, social media runs the exact same loop on your sense of self. The feed shows you a bar nobody can clear. The jaw, the body, the lifestyle. So you post and you wait for the little hits of likes. We're all a little addicted to being seen and a little convinced that we're not seen enough. That's not your flaw. That's the product working as designed. If you think that's just me talking, well, this year's World Happiness Report, the big Oxford and Harvard one, they put numbers on it. So a Harvard professor describes social media as a product trap, something people would literally pay to have taken away even as they keep using it. In one study, young people said that they'd pay real money to get everyone off TikTok for a month, themselves included. Almost 2/3 of them were worse off for the app even existing. That's not weak character. That's a trap working as designed. Well, it is just one study for now, so it's not yet the final word, but it names exactly what you've been feeling all along. You're not lonely because you're broken. You're lonely because someone handed you a slot machine and told you it was a relationship. The furthest end to this machine, the clearest, saddest version of the whole thing, OnlyFans. An entire industry built on selling men the feeling of being chosen, one payment at a time. A man who feels invisible everywhere else pays a creator on OF, tips a model on a live stream, subscribes for the reply that sounds personal. And for a moment, someone beautiful acts like he matters. He's not really paying for photos. He's paying for the fantasy of being seen, being wanted, being picked. If men weren't starving for that, none of it would fly. It runs on the thirst, and women learn to sell thirst traps. And I'll say this to that man with zero contempt because the loneliness under it is real. That money buys you an inch of feeling wanted that vanishes the second the screen goes dark. Take that same energy, the time, the money, the hope, and pour it into something you can actually build. A skill, a friendship, a real person who can love you back. Validation you rent disappears. Worth you build is all yours. Now, let's dive deeper to my own argument, because if I leave it here, it sounds like I'm blaming people, which I am not. Everything I just described, the shopping, the rationing, the filtering, the paying, none of it is irrational. Each person is responding sensibly to a market handing them bad options. The woman protecting her energy from 1,000 messages is being smart. The man casting a wider net because narrow nets get him nothing is also being smart. They're both playing the game correctly. The game is just rigged so that playing it correctly makes everyone lose. And the house, the platforms, wins either way. So, before you point at the other gender, point at the machine. It's not her, it's not him. It's the thing in your pocket that prized your loneliness and sold it back to you. And before anyone clips this into, see, dating apps are a scam. Delete them all. That's not the lesson and truth being presented here. Because that same Pew survey found that 1 in 10 partnered adults met their person on a dating app. For people under 30, it's 1 in 5. Actually, I met my person from a dating app too. The apps are not a scam that never works. They're a tool that genuinely builds real relationships while also profiting from 1,000 little habits that keep everyone else swiping. Both of those are true at once, and it is important that we acknowledge both. The system trains us to reject perfectly buildable people before the slow, quiet things that make them worth choosing ever get the chance to show up. There was a viewer from my previous episode. He said, everybody settles, men and women both. Most of us did not end up with our first choice. And that takes nothing away from how good a choice it turned out to be. The tragedy was never ending up with someone who wasn't your fantasy. It's the years you can burn chasing the fantasy before you let the good one count. So now let me bring this home to my side of the world. People ask me why dating still works in the Philippines when it's breaking over there. And I think the answer is the validation economy. Here, your worth doesn't come from a stranger's swipe, or at least it didn't used to. It comes from your village. Your family knows you. Your neighbors know you. The tindera at the corner store has known you since you were a kid. You're seen constantly, whether you like it or not, by people who actually know your name. Now, I am not going to pretend we're immune, because Filipinos are some of the heaviest social media users on the planet. The majority practically live on their phones. The validation economy is absolutely here, but here's a difference that still protects us. For us, the apps are mostly an extension of our real life. The family, the barkada, the church, the community, those are still the main places we go to feel like we matter. The screen is a branch. Over there, however, the screen slowly became the whole tree. That's why the same machine does less damage here, not because we're better people, but because we still have somewhere else to be seen. That's the thing the West lost, and we talked about it last episode. When the village disappears, the need to feel seen doesn't disappear with it. It just gets outsourced. And the market is more than happy to sell it back to you at a markup, one swipe at a time. And here's what gave me chills, because the same report backs up everything we just said about the village. The countries collapsing in happiness are the rich, individualistic, English-speaking countries. The US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. And the collapse is concentrated in the young. Meanwhile, Costa Rica, a family-centered Latin American country, cracked the global top 4 for the first time in history. The researchers' explanation: individualistic cultures teach you your worth is how you rank or stack up against everyone else. Community-centered cultures, on the other hand, they teach you your worth is what you give to people who know your name. One runs on comparison, the other runs on contribution. Guess which one the validation economy is selling? And before any guy takes this and say, see, flee the West, the data says so. Read it again, because the report never said, go get a foreign wife. It said, the thing that actually makes humans happy is belonging and contribution, not comparison. That's not a plane ticket. That's a way of living, and you can start it tonight in your own country, in your own life. Where you are now is the best place you can start. That's the real work, not booking a flight to escape the comparison game, but building a life worth being present for. The Philippines was never the antidote. Trading comparison for contribution is. And one more thing, because it should end the gender war right here. I hope so. The most damaged group in that entire report wasn't men. It was teenage girls, the heaviest social media users checking into the comparison machine, the youngest coming out with the lowest well-being on record. This economy isn't chewing up one sex only. It's chewing up everybody. The boys just tend to go quiet while the girls tend to get counted. So to the Western men who thinks the Philippines is a clean escape, hatchet. It isn't. The same live stream tipping, the follower chasing, and the soft monetizing of attention is here too, on the same phones. So I won't pretend this is a magic exit. And to the men thinking it is, if you fly here still running a spec sheet, still keeping a tab open, still needing to be validated more than you need to be loved, or to love someone, you will not escape the validation economy. You'll just rebuild it here with a Filipina in the spec sheet seat. So where does that leave you? Here's the reframe I want you to walk away with. The problem was never that you have standards or that you want to be wanted. Wanting to be seen, to matter to someone is the most human thing there is. The problem is the economy that took that healthy hunger and turned it into a transaction that made you a shopper and a thing on the shelf at the same time. You can step out of that economy, not by lowering your standards, but by charging what you're actually shopping for. Stop hunting for the best. Start recognizing the right. Trade the maximizers endless. Is there something better for the satisficers? This is good and I'm going to build on it. That's not settling. That's the only move that has ever produced a lasting love in any culture, in any century. And stop treating attention like it's the prize, because attention is cheap now. The apps literally print it. It's like, printing fiat money and inflated everything. It's literally that. Being chosen on purpose by one person who actually knows you and stays anyway, that's the thing the validation economy can't sell you. You can only build it with someone, and it starts with yourself. And I am speaking from personal experience. Remember that line I mentioned earlier? The things that matter most were never the things you could see on a screen. The essential part is invisible. You only ever find it with time, with presence, with someone who keeps showing up. A swipe will never get you there, because the opposite of validation was never indifference. It's reciprocity. And I am very big on that thing. Validation asks one question: how many people want me? A real relationship asks a harder one: who keeps choosing me when the attention isn't new anymore? One of those is a number, the other is information. The exact thing this whole economy trained you to stop collecting. So, stop counting how many people notice you. Instead, start noticing who consistently shows up. When was the last time you closed a tab on a real person, said no to the maybe something better, just to stay fully present with the one in front of you? If you can't remember, that's not a you problem. That's the economy talking through your thumb. But noticing it is the first day you stop being its customer. So, tell me in the comments, and be honest, have you been shopping when you thought you were dating? If this series resonates with you, subscribe! In the next episode, we stop diagnosing the problem and start talking about how to not bring it with you. Share this to someone who needs to hear it, and agree or disagree respectfully in the comments. I read every one of them. For now, Joe signing off. Till next time, my co-Philippine dreamers, ingat lagi! Bye! Look at houses you have. Let me do that again. Okay. The researchers put it gently. Go back. End of body A. So we have to acknowledge. Okay. End of section D. Oh my God, I finished it. I can't believe it.